Ad men William Shatner, Robert Reed, and Marjoe Gortner try to seal the deal on a campaign by taking a dirt bike trip across Baja with a malevolent Andy Griffith. We'll give you a few seconds to process that. Battle of the Network shows. Join Rick Brooks and Mike Kogel as they explore the TV of the 70s and 80s through hand-picked episodes of their favorite and not-so-favorite series.
Welcome to another Battle of the Network shows. I'm Mike.
And I'm Rick. Hello, everybody.
And today we're going to talk about a TV movie.
We're bringing the television movie to Battle of the Network shows. And I think that gives us access to a rich array of material, Mike.
Book adaptations, true crime, just based on a true story in general.
Yeah, failed pilots,
romances, I guess.
Sure, all kinds of material.
I guess we have done a few of the superhero things we did were sort of failed pilot TV movies.
Right. Now, as a kid, growing up during this era, the 70s and 80s, I was not into TV movies at all. How about you?
I don't think so. Partly, I think they were generally geared more to adults, but especially sort of the more steamy ones, or also the burning bed type.
Issue-based.
Yes. And I think they probably usually aired like 8 to 11, right?
Or
like the two, or 9 to 11.
Right.
So for a long period of childhood, if I had been able to see any of it, I might have only been able to see the first hour or half hour.
Yeah. And also, like, from a practical standpoint, too, you're a kid, you're doing stuff. I mean, you're probably going to miss, like, some. You can't, like, record it. It wasn't like you had a DVR. 2 hours is, like, a big commitment in a TV watching life. And I think as a kid, I would think, like, well, I can watch, like, 2 or 3 like comedies, or I can watch like one TV movie that I'm probably not that interested in. So usually, I think this has come up a bit when we've done the TV guide games. We weren't watching these movies usually. We were watching whatever was on against it.
Yeah, even like a theatrical movie playing on TV was a bit of a chore to watch.
Yes, I would agree with certain exceptions. Like I would make an exception for Superman the movie every year and Grease every year. But other than that, I wasn't really into movies on TV in general.
But even Superman the movie was a chore in a way because it was actually a longer version.
Yes.
It was like the whole night, or was it a 2-night?
I think they did both. Yeah, I think they'd either take a 3-hour block, and then at least once or twice they did a special 2-night event.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a chore.
I think I've told you that's one of the reasons I never quite got into James Bond, because that's how I'd see them. Those were like 3-hour extravaganzas.
And they could seem interminable with commercial breaks.
Yeah.
It's just a tough way to watch them, But we're kind of focusing on the made-for-TV movie, and we've picked out, I think, a pretty good one for this season, and in the future we'll probably talk about some more. So if you have any suggestions, let us know. But sort of looking at this has given me an excuse to kind of look back and recognize and explore some of the TV movies that I certainly didn't watch at the time. And I think they also don't get a lot of respect, and they may be floating around. They may even have DVD releases, but they're just not always considered part of television lore and history the way some of the series we've talked about are.
Yeah, they come and go.
Yeah.
Maybe only air once.
Right.
And I think one of the things that makes this one interesting is that it's sort of just it's not based on any, it's just a original idea made as this TV movie.
Yeah,
and I don't know, was it a feature movie that they couldn't quite get the budget, so they made it into a TV movie, or couldn't get distribution?
Right.
What's the deal there? But
well, in this, the one we're going to talk about, it's called For the Wildcats, and it was part of the ABC Movie of the Week. And I think that's one thing people today might not realize, because at some point the broadcast networks pretty much gave up on original TV movies and it became like a cable thing. And now when you think this, you would think, what, Hallmark, Lifetime, women in peril movies on Lifetime,
right?
Maybe romantic comedies on Hallmark, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and the occasional sort of prestige thing on HBO.
Exactly, yeah. And for a while there, I think maybe in the early aughts, the 1990s, TNT was doing a lot of that, right? They were kind of making their bones with serious made-for-TV movies with prestige casts and bigger budgets. But in the 70s and 80s, I think arguably the 70s was the heyday of the TV movie, And then the 80s, it became a little bit more issues-based, but you had things like The Day After, which was huge on NBC. In the 70s, you had a lot of like more genre movies is what you'd think of, like horror movies especially seem to be really big on the ABC movie of the week, like Don't Be Afraid of the Dark and Bad Ronald.
Bad Ronald.
Like sort of movies that people remember growing up as a kid, and maybe they would get cable re-airs like in the early days of cable, like on TBS or something like that, but they aren't as celebrated. And I think one thing is we've talked a lot about like Nick at Night TV Land. Every now and then as like special events they would show TV movies, but they don't have like a movie night of the week or something on these cable channels. If they do, like MeTV for example, right now they'll have like Svengoolie who will show like monster movies, but it's a different kind of show. But there's really not one dedicated outlet that I know of that says, hey, okay, here every week we're going to show like a classic or vintage TV movie and put it on there. And I don't know, I think there might be a case could be made that maybe they should do that, because if you look back, even if you just look at the ABC movie of the week, there was all kinds of stuff that aired in that time slot. And that was mainly 1969, 1975. And just on the ABC movie of the week alone, you had like things like Love Boat and Kung Fu kind of start in that time slot, and of course became like TV shows. But you also had things like Duel, Brian's Song, which is famous, Born Innocent, Go Ask Alice. So these are some of the more well-known ABC movies of the week. But it was quite a franchise for a while, and then everybody started doing it. NBC would have movie of the week, CBS would have like original movies, and maybe it got a little saturated. And then it seemed like it kind of started declining and maybe more event-based and issue-based in the 80s. So I'd say probably the 70s and kind of around the time we're talking about was more the heyday of the movie of the week on network television.
And it seems like, I don't know if this is accurate, but a place for, say, TV actors to go after they had done a series and didn't want to do another series, but probably weren't big enough to transition to theatrical films.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and probably gave a lot of like Steven Spielberg did Duel,
right,
with Dennis Weaver, which kind of combines like both those things, like the thing you were talking about, and the fact that you're giving like younger filmmakers and younger talent a chance to earn their chops too. And Spielberg was working for Universal, and they produced Duel and put it out, and you'd have Dennis Weaver, who was I guess that was pre-McLeod, but after being on Gunsmoke and that kind of thing. You'd have like name actors, but not necessarily really big name actors for the most part. And I guess in some way too, you could consider it like an extension, like an anthology series. And kind of like if you look at the early days of television, there were tons of anthologies like Playhouse 90, Studio One, but they were more considered like live plays, like more drama. But really, it's just kind of like you're bringing a different story on with different actors, different casts. So the movie of the week maybe is kind of an extension of that. So
speaking of recognizable actors, this is a heck of a cast here.
Yeah, it occurs to me that like some of the things we've just talked about are a little maybe highfalutin for considering we're about to the type of movie we're about to talk about today. We are not talking about something that would have been a Playhouse 90, I don't think.
No.
But it's very entertaining, and yes, it features a cast of at least one Batty Award winner.
Yes, one Batty Award winner and three legends? I don't know.
I'd say two bona fide legends and one icon would be fair.
Yeah, and Angie Dickinson.
Yeah.
Which is not to say she's not either of those. I think she might be both of those.
And somebody else who, we'll get to this, somebody else who's appeared on Battle of the Network shows already that was almost, I got way too excited when I saw him in this movie.
I didn't recognize him until the freeze frame end credits. And then I had to double check. I'm like, is that who I think it is? And then it was. And yeah.
Yeah, and one of the people in this cast, I'm surprised that he hasn't made it to Battle of the Network shows yet, but I'm glad he's here.
Uh-huh.
And it kind of makes sense because it's really not his era, and actually 1974 is definitely not his era. But
I'm not sure which of the people. I assume you mean William Shatner.
Yes, the great William Shatner,
right.
One of our favorites, one of everybody's favorites, really. But he finally makes his way to the podcast.
Yeah, along with the top-billed Andy Griffith.
Yes.
In one of his not so infrequent heel roles.
Yeah, at the time it was, but looking back now, it's like it doesn't seem as surprising because it seemed like he wound up playing a lot of these guys.
Yeah, I mean, and of course he had done Face in the Crowd. Mm-hmm. That was in the 50s, right?
Yeah, that was before Andy Griffith's show.
Yeah,
he was a real heel in Face in the Crowd.
Yeah, and I know he played at least a few in other TV movies and things, but certainly not Andy Taylor in this.
Yeah, this is definitely a cast against type example, I think.
Yeah, and they're joined by guest stars.
Yeah, gotta love this.
Robert Reed, of course,
And talk about casts against type. I wasn't quite sure about this, but this aired when Brady Bunch was still on the air.
Oh, hey.
So this was like the last season of Brady Bunch. This would have been finishing up the 5th season, and it's kind of interesting that I assumed that this was after the show went off the air and he was looking for work, but it's kind of bold to put him on when your same network is showing your Brady Bunch sitcom and he's the dad on that.
Interesting. Maybe I guess that's why he was a guest star.
Maybe.
I don't know, but
Yeah.
and that is interesting though, because I wonder if that fueled some of his characterization of this guy
It could be.
who sort of like feels stuck but he has a chance at something new,
Yeah.
and his wife might be leaving him. I don't know.
Yeah.
His TV wife was
Right.
So yeah, and then the Genius Award winner Marjoe Gortner,
Yes.
filling out the main cast there.
Mike, let's just pause here. Imagine a movie that's so loaded with star power that Genius Award winner Marjoe Gortner is like the 4th in this great
Right.
and in this Mount Rushmore of TV icons. you close it out with Marjoe.
Yeah.
It's gonna be worth watching. And he's got a big role in this too.
He does. They both do, even though they're guest stars.
Yeah.
Was Angie Dickinson a guest star?
I think she was an and.
An and.
I don't know if she was a special guest star, but I think it was an and. Angie Dickinson.
I must have looked away from the screen when her name popped up, because when she did show up,
yeah,
I was a little surprised.
Yeah. Well,
once I recognized her,
right,
because the first few scenes, like, they're kind of wide shots. And
yeah.
it was hard to tell. I don't know if I recognize the names of the other two, Lorraine Gary and Janet Margolin.
Lorraine Gary was in the Jaws movies as Brody's wife.
Okay.
And this I did not know, but just recently found out that she was actually married to Universal executive and super Hollywood guy Sid Sheinberg.
Interesting.
And I think she's his. He just passed away recently this year, and I think she's his widow. I think they were married right up until his death. Okay. So she retired from acting at some point and just became like, okay, I'm super rich and like the power wife of the power player, I guess.
Sure. Why not?
Yeah.
And then a few other people the person John Barber of Real People fame.
Yes, and a small but pivotal role.
Yes.
That was very interesting.
And you know how I knew it was him when I went to IMDb? That it was the same one, just because the first thing that came up was like a JFK conspiracy thing.
Yes, well, it was great to see him, John Barber from Real People again. I don't know if now I'm kind of looking for him, but I didn't. Even after doing Real People, I didn't know that he had such an extensive acting career. I thought of him more as a newsman and gadfly, whatever.
Is it an appropriate time to talk about the hair?
Well, just the fact that I have to ask which hair says to me that we should get this out of the way and talk about it, because there's a lot of great hair in this.
There's a lot of great hair. So, Marjoe and Robert Reed both have Marjoe has his natural curly hair.
Yeah.
Robert Reed has his, maybe that is his natural hair. Maybe the straight hair was his unnatural hair. But, the later era Brady Bunch hair that you think.
Yeah, classically described as his perm, his late era perm, I think, fair to say. But yes, he's definitely rocking that.
Right, and of course Andy Griffith always had a great head of hair.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's Shatner.
Yes. Interesting choice by Shatner in this one. Huh?
I
like as soon as he takes off the helmet, because the movie starts with them on the 4 leads riding bikes quite a bit.
Dirt bikes, yeah.
Yeah, and then you get to see him take off the helmet, and right away you're drawn to his hair.
Yes. So he was already wearing a piece at this point in his career, right?
I think yes.
Even on Star Trek.
I think even on Star Trek, yes, there was. But I think it was more of like I think a lot of times he was doing like a partial piece.
Okay.
So, but this though.
This is so, and now, if it only happened in scenes where he took off his helmet, you might be okay. He's got helmet hair.
Yeah.
So it's a very everything combed like forward and kind of longish. I don't know, not quite a Beatles haircut, but in that vein, maybe a little bit.
It's almost like, I think it suits the character, because to me it's almost like a guy that's like, it's a haircut that would have been like scandalous like 10 years earlier.
Right.
But now it's kind of like a guy trying to catch up, but he's a little bit behind.
Yeah.
And for him, it's kind of like even he's wearing it even a little bit longer than he'd be comfortable with normally.
Right. And it's very dark.
It is,
like
yes.
A dark brown, kind of the way Shatner's perm, quote unquote perm, was. But then he's got gray sideburns.
Yeah, the distinguished.
Yeah, but which just makes it look more fake.
Yeah, the whole package is a little. It definitely stands out right away.
Yeah, and it does suit the character though, who is by Shatner standards fairly subdued.
Yes, and he's wears spectacles.
Yes, he does,
which is another interesting choice.
And narrow lapels.
Yes. Yeah, right.
And his dirt biking shirt is like the exact same shade of yellow as his Star Trek shirt.
It is.
That has a black collar. It's really weird.
That had to have been.
It must have been
known.
Then Robert Reed's wearing like a red one with a black collar, so I assumed he was gonna die.
Yeah. and Andy Griffith's character wears the same colored.
Yeah, I think that his collar is blue instead of black.
Yeah, but the basic color looks like the.
Yeah.
But they kind of build up to it, so you're seeing Shatner, and then
right,
like as soon as he puts that shirt on, it's very distracting.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that was a good choice, but it's entertaining though.
Yeah, so I guess we'll get into it. It does open with the credit sequence and maybe a few more minutes of dirt biking.
Yeah,
4 guys riding around in circles, kicking up some dust.
And some funky music.
Funky music. But it does give us our first taste of characterization as one of the bikers rides up a big hill, sits at the top waiting.
Mm-hmm.
Another one starts to ride up and he makes it part way and then tips over.
Yeah.
So that's Marjoe.
Yeah.
And he looks up at the other guy and it's Andy Griffith and he gives him a cheese-eating grin. Zooms on over the other side of the hill.
Yeah.
And, it's like, yeah, already, this is not Andy Taylor.
Yeah. He's the leader of the pack in this group.
Yeah. So Angie Dickinson's character is married to Robert Reed's character. Rain Gary's married to Shatner.
Mm-hmm.
The Janet Margolin is playing Chrissy, who's Marjoe's girlfriend.
Yeah. I'm
not even going to bother mentioning the characters' names.
Yeah.
They're Shatner.
Yeah. I think maybe we should just go with that. Janet Margolin was she was actually in a couple of the early Woody Allen movies, and Annie Hall playing sort of like Woody Allen's love interest.
Okay.
She died at the age of 50, but she was married to Ted Wass, who was on Blossom and so
okay.
I guess so. But I think she was primarily like a theater actress too, and she doesn't get a whole lot to do in this, and it was tough for me to remember her name. But it's no disservice to her. It's just that focus on the guys in this.
Yeah, I think I could remember her character's name because I didn't know who she was. Whereas the guys are.
Yeah.
I believe it's Warren.
Yeah, Warren.
That's Shatner. Sam is Andy Griffith.
Yeah.
Terry.
Yep.
Is Marjoe. Paul.
Yes, Paul. Paul is Robert Reed. Yeah.
But we're probably not going to stick to.
Yeah. No, I think it's.
I don't remember Angie Dickinson's character's name.
Yeah. I think it was Nancy.
One was Lila.
Nancy, I think.
Nancy and Lila.
Yeah, okay. Or Lily.
Lily, something like that.
I think Lily is Shatner's wife. And...
Yeah. So they're like preparing a feast, a post dirt bike ride and feast.
Yeah, and when we say feast, they've got like a table laid out with like a
a ham and
there's like one of these like a serving platter with like a lid on it.
Yeah.
Not something you expect to see at an average picnic or anything.
No, and I believe they comment on that.
Yes.
What happened to just hot dogs and hamburger?
Yeah.
But it's all to please the mighty Sam Farragut.
Yeah.
Andy Griffith. So we learn a little bit. Something's going on there. We don't know exactly why they need to please this guy, but they do. So the guys, except for Andy, come in and we learn the relationships and a little bit more of that they're just trying to please this guy and win him over somehow. And then he shows up and he's kind of harassing Chrissy.
Yeah, he's kind of invades her physical space and kind of tells her to kind of makes her sit down next to him. And
right. And then Marjoe just kind of stands there.
Yeah. He doesn't really object or anything.
No. He mentions, this is the first time it comes up, he mentions like this is not real riding. It's all flat here.
Yeah.
They need to go to Baja and take this 600-mile trip.
Right.
And the younger guys, Robert Reed and Marjoe are kind of like, well, yeah, sure. And Shatner's like, yeah, I have to mind the office.
Yeah.
I don't have time.
Just doesn't have the time, yeah.
Yeah. And you can tell there's tension between those two.
Yeah, every time Sam says something, Warren's face kind of has a little. He doesn't outright flinch all the time, but he actually does a lot of time. You can tell he doesn't get along with him.
Yeah, who can blame him?
Yeah.
But he's Sam. He's just this big character, but you can tell he's kind of not a nice guy.
Yeah.
So it turns out they work for an ad agency, and they're trying to get the contract with him.
Yeah.
For his Farragut Industries, makers of heavy equipment and other things.
Right.
So the next day we see them at the office, and they're doing their pitch, and he's just not into their pitch at all, which frankly was not really. It was not the best televised ad pitch I've seen.
Well, Shatner, as you say, is kind of more subdued mode, and he's not like selling it, and being like hammy about it. He's being like very like straight-laced and kind of like emphasizing like the messaging, like the last frontier, the last challenge or whatever.
Yeah,
so he's got
the final challenge.
Yeah. He's got a theme he's proud of, but he's not selling it like a salesman.
Yeah.
He's just like presenting it to him, and he's got kind of like a smug like look of confidence about him, like he thinks it's good, but
right.
Sam's looking for, a little bit more pizzazz.
And the way they present it, they just have like a big picture of the desert.
Yeah.
And then Robert Reed steps up and puts like a magnetic logo in the middle of it. And then there's like another, like the final challenge, that slogan is like on a little sign that they sit on the table.
Yeah.
It's very, they don't have I guess I'm just used to like Mad Men and 30-something.
Yeah.
Every movie where someone played an ad agent, where they have the storyboards and they're doing the little song and dance and all that.
Yeah. Well, it is a rather low-key presentation for such an important, client, as we say. And I can't really blame Sam for being, like, a little vague. He's just saying, well, it's just not much to it, and Warren keeps asking for details, in a kind of a very cold way that indicates he's kind of ticked off.
Right.
It's like, well, if you can give me some details, we can know what to fix or whatever.
Yeah.
And Andy Griffith doesn't really do that.
It's like, better.
Yeah, he wants something else, something better, yeah.
Yeah.
Eventually, he kind of gets to the point and he says it stinks.
Right.
But first, he's just kind of like dancing around it and just saying, well, I need it. And he solicits Terry's opinion.
Right. And because he can tell from his haircut and his outfit that he's an independent thinker.
Right. Yeah.
And Terry's like, oh, yeah.
And Terry proves that he's not an independent thinker.
That's right.
By saying he stands with the agent, he stands with the group and he goes along with the presentation.
I mean, he's got a bag full of artwork, but he doesn't show them.
Yeah, he doesn't really want to see. Sam's not in the mood to see artwork.
No, and then there's a phone call, and Warren gets called out of the office
right in the middle of a big meeting with an important client.
Yeah,
yeah. This part of the movie made no sense to me. I still don't understand. Like, it doesn't fit together for me.
I mean, I understand it in the sense that they, like, from this point for like I don't know, 5-10 minutes, they're showing us like that all of these guys have these sort of pressure points.
Right.
In their lives right now.
Yeah.
So he apparently has already been fired.
Yes.
But on a long
there's
leash or something.
Yeah, you don't see this in corporate America these days where somebody, gets to stick around until they find another job.
Yeah. He thinks he's got another job lined up, and this is where we see John Barber. He's
would you say
he's kind of smug about it?
I was going to say, would you say he's a little oily?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. It's like he's not quite taking glee in it, but he's not broken up about it either. And he tells Warren that he's got to give that the parking space, but he did a favor. He can keep the country club membership until he finds something else or whatever.
Right,
so, but I don't understand why he's still there in the first place, let alone working on an important account.
I mean, maybe it's because if there's just a long period of like working on the building up to the account or something, that they want him there for continuity.
That's what makes sense. Yeah,
because he doesn't want him to tell anyone.
Yeah,
that this is going on. But
and at one point I thought maybe like Sam had already caused the firing, like he was being terminated because of something that Andy Griffith's character had done. But I don't think that's the case either. But
they do implicate later that it seems like that Sam had put some pressure on.
Right. Again, it doesn't make sense though, because if that's the case, why would he say like, look, I want him out of here, but I want him to keep finishing this campaign, even though I don't think he's up to,
right.
This part of the story doesn't make any sense.
Unless it's like a macho head game that he thinks if I put this pressure on him, he'll give me his best, his A game, and then I can, because later he does offer to put in a word to kind of get him back on track.
Yeah, because Andy Griffith not only knows that he's been terminated, he knows, which hardly anybody else does apparently, but he knows that he's not going to get a job at the other agency that he thought was going to go through.
And I sort of inferred that he's also the reason why he's not getting that job.
Yeah. It could be, yeah. Well,
hey, Pritchard, this Warren guy, I don't know.
Yeah.
And the boss, Norlin? Is that the
Yeah.
Norlin Advertising Agency? He also points out that that Warren is wearing narrow lapels.
Yeah.
He's way behind the times.
Right.
Which is I found interesting partly because during the previous scene I was noticing how wide Andy Griffith's lapels were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it was cool. It's like, oh, that was an
Yeah.
intentional detail. Okay.
Right. Right.
Yeah. But it does give you this idea, okay, this Warren guy is maybe a little behind the times.
Yeah.
Like you said, his haircut. He's trying to
Yeah.
maybe look younger and is just not. He's a little bit of a stiff.
Right. There's definitely things going on with the guy, but yeah, probably a relic of an earlier advertising era.
Right. And when he comes back, he finds out that the other guys have agreed to go on this stupid trip.
Yeah.
Like, that's the only way they're going to get the account. They
Yeah.
go on this trip, and he can pick the scenery himself.
Yeah.
Because they were going to shoot it in Baja anyway.
Yeah.
So, but Warren right now is no, I can't.
Yeah.
And understandable. I mean, if you're losing your job, why would you go on a dumb trip like that?
Yeah. Which he and
he hates all this stuff anyway.
Yeah, he's not into the biking thing anyway.
Yeah.
So I can't really blame him. And it's clear that nobody's really that into it. They're just doing it to please Sam. But they're all ambitious.
Yeah.
Paul and Terry are very ambitious.
Yes.
And they definitely want a piece of this account, and they're conscious of their places in the agency.
And so that when we see some of their home life, it's clear that Warren's wife likes spending money.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not in a bad way. She just wants to remodel and do
Right.
stuff. And they have kids in a private school, and
Yep, 2 cars, a lifestyle that they have to keep up.
yeah. And he hasn't told her.
Yeah.
Although supposedly they share everything important, but there's some sort of tension in the Robert Reed Angie Dickinson marriage.
Yeah, it seems like that relationship is deteriorating, and I guess the idea is a lot of it seems to me like he's not attentive to her, and he's married to his job now.
Yeah, exactly. And she would be happy to be like living in a crummy apartment.
Right.
As long as they were together.
Right, but she's not getting his attention, and he's making it clear that he's focused on the job right now, and he's not willing to give her that attention.
Yeah, and then Marjoe is like totally like, oh, he's gonna see this art, he's gonna love it. He's definitely, despite being a hippie,
Yeah,
and stuff, he's possibly the most blatantly ambitious one of them.
yeah. Even if you give him some allowances and say that he's anxious to get his vision across, it still comes off as pretty crass and definitely like focused on advancement to the exclusion of everything else, including his girlfriend.
Right, who it turns out is pregnant.
Yeah, and when she says, this is 1974. She says did she say point blank to him? Point blank, do you want to keep it or
Yeah.
Should I keep it or not?
Right. Yeah.
And
he doesn't.
He's like, well, let's not talk about it. Let's talk about it when I get back from the trip, which of course is what, I'm sure every woman wants to hear when you're making a major life decision, but just the implication is pretty, big for 1974.
And then Warren, he goes to the doctor to up his life insurance policy.
Yeah, and it's an interesting transition because they cut right from that discussion, and which is left a little ambiguous to the exterior shot of the medical facility.
Right.
And I assumed it was going to be about them, that they had made some decision or whatever there. But no, as you say, it's William Shatner getting a checkup and boosting his life insurance, which people do.
Mm-hmm.
Double their life insurance. Right. Every insurance agent is always telling you don't have enough insurance. So
this is true.
Why not?
Right. I mean, he got $100,000 policy a couple years ago, but now, why not 200,000?
Yeah, and his doctor is asking him, and he's just saying, well, why not?
And then,
and by the way,
and he finds out he or the office calls, or whatever, he calls because he thinks he's got a message about that job.
Yeah, he's still excited about the Pritchard job.
No message.
Yeah,
and the guy's going out of town.
I think he's going out of town on a safari with Andy Griffith's character or something, but maybe not. But maybe he's already been on that safari. And
he probably has.
Sam told him, Ixnay on Oran Way.
Right.
And I just want to say that because people might wonder, you see briefly topless William Shatner.
Oh, yeah.
In pretty good physical condition.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, the doctors, he's taking x-rays and stuff, but to the viewer at home, Shatner's in pretty good condition for a middle-aged guy suffering through the everyday banalities of modern life. Yes.
And do you think for Shatner acting-wise, getting a normal routine medical examination was weird after years of just being scanned with things?
Yeah, it probably felt like for him, like how some people get claustrophobic going into an MRI. I mean, just sitting on a bench for more than
Right.
2 minutes must have felt like claustrophobia to him.
Or, and he kept urging the doctor, that actor, play it a little gruffer.
Yeah.
Just a little.
Yeah.
You've got too much bedside manner.
Yeah. Do we? How can we be sure that he's a doctor? He's like looking off camera, the director. Well, he's wearing a white coat and everything. Yeah, but do we know that he's a doctor for sure? I mean, can I challenge him a little bit on that? Can I ask him for financial advice or something? No, Bill, just play it the way it is, please. It's fine. People will know that he's a doctor.
And but he has another phone call with Angie Dickinson.
Yeah.
Interesting. And apparently they had a little fling.
Mm-hmm.
And she seems, maybe because her marriage stinks, more invested in it.
Yes, that's exactly the word I would use, invested in.
I don't know. I think he's distracted. So we don't know really what his investment in that was or is.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's thinking about all this other pressure on him already.
Yeah. Well, it seems to me like there's just a general neurotic sense about him. Like for someone that had an affair with Angie Dickinson, he's not very intense about it. He just seems guilty. He says it was a mistake, but he's not like wound up. Yeah, you're right. He's got like that simmering pressure to him. It's not so much the emotions of it at this point. It's more like he's worried about what's going to happen, and it's almost like he's more worried about his wife finding out than anything else.
Yeah.
I don't even know. You get the sense that maybe he didn't even enjoy the experience. Maybe he just thought, oh, it was something to do. And, again, one of these moments where he decides to be daring and look what happened. Now he feels guilty about it. He's regretting it. And she is clearly like willing to pursue it. And he's just like, yeah, he's distracted. He's got all this other stuff going on.
Yeah. And he's in the process of plotting something.
Yeah. And interestingly, though, she knows that he's been terminated from his job.
That's right, yeah. So even though he claims that we didn't mean that much to each other, whatever the phrase is, he did tell her something that he didn't tell his own wife.
Yeah, some of the pillow talk was a little on a high level, apparently.
Yeah. And she's the only person who picks up on what he's plotting.
Yeah.
So, because he decides to go on this trip, after all. I guess after he finds out he didn't get that job.
Yeah.
Although it seems like he's already plotting that since he's there to get that insurance.
Yeah, maybe he would have done it maybe would have had some different scheme.
Yeah.
Like go deep sea diving or something. I don't know.
But so then they all go to the border, and Sam had custom jackets made for them.
Yeah, it was a nice touch.
So the Baja Wildcats.
Yeah.
Being a jerk, of course. He gets one the same size as his for Shatner. It's way too big.
Yeah. And he keeps making a point to comment on that. He's really emphasizing that they've got the same thing.
Yeah.
When you know that Warren's hating it.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not even really hiding it.
Right. I think Marjoe's the only one who likes it.
Yeah, and let me point out, I was watching this with my girlfriend Lori, and she kept kind of seeing here that they were building up to something like a mistaken identity or something like. I think she was seeing while picking up on the clues about Shatner's intention. She was kind of like I think she was really rooting for Shatner to kill Andy Griffith's character, and it seemed like they were laying the groundwork for that with like similar like establishing that wearing the same clothes and everything, and giving Shatner motive for all this stuff. And this is not against her because she correctly predicted about 4 or 5 different lines of dialogue like right before they happen, like exact lines of dialogue. So she was on the ball. I think she got her wish to see Shatner murder Griffith maybe clouded her judgment a little bit, but you can definitely see how they were maybe trying to lay that groundwork too, or at least put it out there as a possibility.
No, that didn't come to me, but it makes sense.
Or some kind of mistaken identity where he could assume him or something and start over or something. I don't know. But
right.
Because you're going, to Baja away.
Right. He could kill Andy Griffith, but also fake his own death.
Yes.
Definitely possibilities there. They might have, maybe at one point, the writer had considered that.
Yeah.
Now we do get, what I'm guessing was one of your favorite moments.
I know exactly what you're going to say, and it was.
Yes.
And I cheered, yes.
As they're leaving, and it's the border, so there's in this case, a chain link fence.
Yeah.
And the 3 women are watching, and Angie Dickinson kind of, I think she puts her fingers through the, the links, and she's like, "Pray for the Wildcats."
Yeah. Totally gratuitous inclusion of the title and dialogue, which of course I love, but it just seemed like awkward to me. of course I love it, but really, pray for the. I mean, and she puts kind of like a sardonic, like a snide spin on it, but really, it's like, why did she say that? It was weird.
Yeah,
it would make more sense if she said, "Well, go Wildcats," like they were a sports team or something like that. But like, pray for the Wildcats,
right?
Made no sense.
Yeah, but it was great.
Yeah, it was great. And, yeah.
And then we get like, I don't know, like an hour and a half of
oh my god,
dirt biking.
Oh, a lot of dirt biking. If you like dirt biking, if you like non-competitive dirt biking,
right, or semi-competitive.
Yes, competitive within the group, but not for a prize money of any kind.
Yeah.
Well, then this is your movie. There's a lot of it. Yeah. And a lot of like wide shots of like the four of them riding through the desert. You'd also get like the close-ups of the guys with their helmets on, and every now and then you get their interior monologues.
Right.
Which is usually stuff that we've already heard in the movie.
Yeah. Or stuff we don't need to hear because it's really obvious.
Yeah.
But eventually, they do stop at a little village, go to a cantina. And now Warren is saying he has some trouble with his bike.
Mm-hmm.
Suspicious.
Right.
But he's going to fix it. And while they're in the cantina, we get to meet yet another, maybe a rare version of Andy Griffith, who I for the sake of our rating here, have dubbed Randy Andy.
That's very good. Yeah, that's appropriate. And
there's a young American girl, blonde girl. She's got her belly exposed. She's got tight jeans, tight shirt.
That classic 1970s.
Yeah.
Traveling in vans, kind of hitchhiking girl.
Yeah.
She looks youngish too.
Yes. Yeah. And she's dancing, and everyone's having a good time with the dancing and stuff. But he's very into it. And then he starts dancing with her.
Yeah.
And boy, he just, when he's playing Malevolent, that face looks...
It's menacing.
It is.
It's genuinely disturbing. Also genuinely disturbing, though, is possibly the only person having as good a time as Andy Griffith is Marjoe.
Yeah.
Marjoe's rather enthusiastic air bongoing and drumming and just like general like his wide-eyed facial expressions and hooting and hollering, and man, he was kind of he was entertaining to watch in this scene.
He was. Now, do you think that character, based on other things we see of this character, was legitimately into it at that time?
At the time, I thought he was, and then now it looks in retrospect, it looks like he was just kind of playing up because he was trying to kind of a self-consciously let's all have fun kind of thing and trying to add to the party atmosphere.
Yeah, but
overdoing
he's
it.
Also, like, despite being this independent thinker, is constantly just trying to impress Sam and be the guy that Sam wants him to be.
Right. He's trying to be like his. He's definitely currying favor, and I think he's trying to going along and adding to the atmosphere and like kind of trying to pick it up a little bit and whoop it up.
And when they're riding, anytime like Sam accelerates, he'll accelerate and ride with him.
Like his shadow or his little buddy or something.
Yeah.
It's very transparent.
And now this girl has a boyfriend, and he gets mad, and he and Sam get in a brief scuffle.
Yeah.
Shatner actually breaks that up.
Yeah. Warren's kind of come and he doesn't like sit down, but he's kind of like observing from like the little entrance.
Yeah.
Until when things start getting out of hand. And he kind of does like, I kind of like the way he broke this fight up. It's kind of like, just kind of like the smiling and being phony about it. And I think everybody knows he's being phony.
Yeah.
Come on, let's settle down. Have a good. We're here to have a good time. You don't want to break up the party, do you?
Yeah.
We're the idea is to go to Baja and enjoy Baja, right? And he's just kind of got this like clenched teeth smile the whole time.
That's how he, brokered that treaty between the Klingons and those blue people.
Yes, the master diplomat at work as always.
Come on, guys.
Yeah, and Sam kind of just looks at him and it's interesting because I think it's like he's like, okay, I'm not really listening to you, but I'm going to go along with you and I'm going to smile too. But it's really my decision to stop this,
Yeah.
For now.
And then they're outside and like Sam is just like dipping his head in the fountain and throwing water all over himself.
Yeah, like
growling
3 or 4 times,
glaring at the guy and the girl, and who have some sort of van type vehicle. And, and he apparently had like 4 shots of tequila.
Yeah, but he'll sweat it off or whatever.
And if not, we're in the middle of the desert.
Yeah, I'm not worried about it, but yeah, he's definitely making a scene.
Yeah, but it does seem like this, this girl is like one of the mini bombs waiting to go off.
Yeah.
In this thing.
Right.
Then we get a scene of the two wives talking. Warren's wife talks about that how cold he can be, and that the other night he read his will out loud to her.
Yeah, they're having like tea, I guess, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like, can you imagine that? You know, having me, reading his will, and I'm sitting there listening to it and nodding my head, and
Right.
It's actually, smart family planning.
It is.
We know otherwise that there's more to it, but
yeah, it's a little ghoulish, but yeah.
But you actually almost see a light bulb go over Angie Dickinson's head.
Yes,
when she hears that, though.
And then you get like a minute of her hearing dialogue that we've already heard.
Right.
Just to reinforce, because he had said something like, "This trip will let me put everything right."
Yeah, it'll make it easier for everyone.
Yeah.
This trip to Baja will make it easier just make it easier for everyone. Yeah. Easier for everyone. Easier for everyone. For everyone.
And more dirt biking.
Of course.
And then they stop on this cliff over a beach, and we see the van that we've seen before is on the cliff, like, set up for a camp. And down on the beach, the girl and the guy are frolicking in the nude in the waves.
Yeah.
And Sam is quite excited about that.
He is. He kind of wants to get a closer look, in fact.
Yes, he does.
Now, Robert Reed's character is sort of like almost a middle ground.
Yeah.
He's more neutral during a lot of this. Just kind of like, whether it be, in the cantina, just kind of having a bemused grin, but not really disapproving as Shatner's character seems to be the whole time. And not like, oh, yeah, sure, like, Marjoe is.
Yeah. I think he knows he has to play along.
He's for now, he's almost like a neutral character. I mean, his marriage is deteriorating, but it just seems kind of like, well, this is what happens in a marriage. And
yeah, right. They even said it at this point, but it does seem like he's going to get Warren's job.
Right, that he's in line for that, yeah. Right. So far, his behavior is not so much out of line with, like, Mike Brady. I mean, he's not doing anything, like, totally shocking or anything.
Yeah.
So the characterization is a little edgy for considering his role, but hasn't quite gone over any lines yet.
He needs to sit Sam down and give him a good Mike Brady talking to.
That's right.
Just because you see a woman you like, it doesn't mean you have to cause trouble.
Can I go down there and cause trouble? I think you know the answer to that already, Sam.
Yeah. that wasn't the answer.
Yeah, that I should have said it like
that. Later, they stop the camp, and Marjoe says one of my favorite lines.
Oh, yeah?
This place is unreal, man. It's unreal.
Yeah. Yeah, Marjoe's character, I wanted to call him like 2 times because he did that earlier too. Like, he kept repeating things. He'd say like, oh, this is far out. But, he would say things back to back. It was a weird, almost like it was a deliberate thing about this character. But yeah, it's unreal, man. And he's looking around very animated when he says it too,
right. We find out later he's a guy who's done acid, and he's an artist and stuff, but wow, this desert is unreal.
Yeah.
It's like sand.
Yeah.
Some little plants.
Yeah. Yeah, it seemed like maybe he had something besides tequila back at the cantina.
Yeah.
But no, I guess it was just genuine, wide-eyed enthusiasm.
You can't keep a good Marjoe down.
No.
But they're trying to plan on what the rest of the trip is going to be.
Yeah, and I'm going to bring this up now. I had a real timing issue because I'm not like, at some point they say that they established it had been 3 days. It was supposed to be a week-long trip.
Yeah.
3 days, but yet I would think that it had only been 1 day when they said it was 3 days.
Right.
Because you don't see them, like, this is the first time you see them, like, talking about, like, camping and bedding down for the night.
Yeah.
So it's like we missed, like, a whole night or two, apparently, right?
Yeah, I'm just going to...
It was just weird.
They just didn't... There's not that much time to show that much dirt biking.
Well, that goes to my problem with the movie.
Yeah.
Which is that I wish there had been more, like, stuff. And I expected there to be more stuff, as opposed to the dirt biking. And we don't see, like, a lot of... to me, like, all of a sudden, like, half the trip got, like... it got compressed, like, very suddenly when they established this 3-day thing.
Right. And they also say something about 100 miles, but then that taking 2 days or something.
Yeah. And wasn't... I'd assume it was a round trip, so they would have to go, like... It would go 3 days out and 3 days back, you would think, but...
Well, no, because later they talk about, like, going to... I think they're going to catch an airplane or a boat or something.
Maybe the whole plan was to get, travel back. Okay, so they got a lot more traveling to do.
And Sam suggested they go to the coast instead, which I'm already suspicious of that.
Yeah.
And he wants to go off go off to this big mountain so he can see, get the lay of the land.
Yeah.
He's willing to go alone.
Right.
But they had agreed no side solo trips like this.
Yeah. I like the fact that they had agreed on that, too. Yeah. Like, look, we're all going to be doing this. So right away, they must have thought that he's going to be a loose cannon. They got to establish this. Because he's the only one that would even think about going on a side solo trip.
And I believe he invites Warren to go with him. It seems like a taunt.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it was. Expecting that he won't, but I think he does offer him, knowing full well that he won't is how I took it.
Yeah, and then of course good old Marjoe volunteers, even though he's caved in.
Yeah.
So they go off, but of course they take a little detour back to the beach.
Yeah, and it's funny, the way, when he does go along, Sam kind of gives, a little shrug, oh, okay, whatever. Yeah. He knows he can control him, I guess, and but yeah, they do take a little little detour.
Right, apparently in a totally different direction.
Yeah.
So the girl's down on the beach walking, the guy's up there. Sam plays nice. He's going to apologize to him for that.
Yeah, it was very classy, really, at first. I was impressed.
He offers to give him some money.
Yeah. Just to help out with the expense, he can tell that they're kind of living close to the bone, or however he puts it.
Yeah, $100. They're a couple of hippies. They could use it.
Yeah.
And then the guy's like, wait a second.
Yeah.
People don't just give you money for nothing.
Yeah. Well, if it would make you feel better.
Yes, exactly. If it would make you feel better, maybe you could give me something back.
Yeah. Cut to woman walking in the beach in the water. Yeah.
And the guy hits Andy or Sam with a stick. Sam grabs a hatchet.
Yeah.
Marjoe tries to stop it, and I believe Sam called him a lousy freak.
Yes, he did, and shoved him, almost like pie-faced him or something like that.
Yeah.
Just pushing away. calls him a lousy freak. See, Andy Griffith, he's a hippie. He knows hippies. He's a hippie too. He says he's a hippie with money.
That's right.
I'm a hippie with money. So he thinks that there's a kinship there at first. It seems like he starts off being all nice, and then once it escalates, though, he goes from 0 to 90 pretty quick as far as the on the menacing scale.
Yeah.
And when he picks up that hatchet,
that guy he runs off, right? He runs down to the beach or something, and then Sam smashes in their radiator with the hatchet, which means they're gonna be stranded there.
Right. He just bought himself a real long walk.
Yeah.
He says something like that.
Not good.
And he doesn't even have the courtesy to yell down to him hey, by the way, I just busted your radiator. Right. He just lets him, because presumably they won't come up until, they think that he's gone.
Yeah.
And, even then, I can only imagine what that conversation was he had to the woman. Remember that old guy that was coming on to you in the cantina? Yeah, he just tried to kill me with a hatchet.
Also, he tried to buy you.
Yeah.
Oh.
Wait, what?
Just hang here for a minute.
Maybe she was offended that he didn't give her a chance to respond to herself, positive or negatively.
Maybe, yeah, right. Maybe he should.
But they had more urgent worries, though, once they got up there and realized that,
Yeah.
They got to hoof it.
Oof. And we got another scene with Angie Dickinson, Sam and Marjoe go back and just say they got lost.
Yeah, gotta confess, we got lost.
Yeah.
Plane got lost. Something like that. Because Shatner's suspicious because they came from the different direction from where he said they were going to go.
Yeah. You know who Sam is? He's Andy Taylor from the Mirror Universe.
I think so. Yep. Yep.
And Marjoe is Barney. No.
Yeah.
So we have a scene where Angie Dickinson calls some government dude, and basically she finally lays out what we've been intuiting, that she thinks Warren has the plan to kill himself while he's down there, presumably to make it look like an accident, though, right? And
yes,
for the insurance. And she wants them to find these guys and bring them back. But since she's not immediate family, this guy can't really ask the Mexican government to use those kind of resources.
Yes, and the guy she's talking to was William Wintersoul, who, interestingly, it's kind of sadly, but he just passed away very recently. He was on Young and Restless for many years, and I was actually reading his obituary and thinking about him kind of in terms of, I'd just been thinking about our usual in memoriam section, and I was like, I don't recognize him. I'm not a soap watcher, and it was very unusual to see him show up. I didn't recognize him in this either until the end. I'm like, oh, it's William Wintersoul. So just rest in peace to Mr. Wintersoul, who had a long, distinguished career and kind of an odd spot here in the movie, though.
Yeah.
Like, what is she exactly trying to accomplish? I mean, they have to establish that she's trying to do something. And it kind of, the fact that he says it's got to be a member of the immediate family or something, it kind of points out her frustrations and stuff and leads directly to another scene later, I guess.
Yes, but it's also kind of poorly placed because right after that, the guys are riding in a helicopter lands.
Right.
I guess he changed his mind.
Yeah.
But it turns out it's a. I mean, I wrote down the federales. I don't know if that.
Yeah, that's. I was saying the whole thing, same thing while I was watching it. Yes.
But it is like a local policeman of some kind, and he takes their visitors' passes and wants to wait till he gets them verified. And he says they're gonna have to stop overnight in this village nearby. But the bigger thing is that the guy turned up dead, the hippie guy.
Yeah.
And the girl was alive, but in the hills, and she had been bitten by a snake.
Yeah. So she was in the hospital, but in bad shape.
Right. So this could be trouble if she wakes up.
Right. She'll be able to.
Game over.
Yeah. Spill the beans. Yep.
And Warren and Paul sort of pull Marjoe aside and ask him, what happened, and Marjoe won't tell them, but they've got a pretty good idea, and they want him to
do the right thing and go to the Capitan,
but he can't do it.
Well, he's got some lame rationalizations for not doing anything, but he just really seems like spineless at this point.
Right, and even later, Robert Reed's the Paul has some kind of maybe slightly less lame rationalizations, but they're not much better.
Yeah, it's kind of like trying to sound like couch it in the sense of like being pragmatic and like, look, I think he kind of reasons that like we can't do anything about it right now anyway, and we're in another.
Right.
Like he kind of implies that they could get into trouble just by getting involved in this, and the whole kind of like just don't get involved kind of argument.
Yeah, I do think that maybe that would be risky.
And it does make sense because I'll be honest, like when I first saw this guy come in, I thought. I assumed he was going to be a stereotypical corrupt local official that was going to harass them, just to do it. But then again, this is the point in the movie where I still felt there was going to be more stuff and less dirt biking. I thought it was going to be a descent into like all kinds of things happening to this group rather than what we got.
Right.
It's a little bit more narrowly focused.
Back in L.A. or wherever they are, Angie Dickinson's character, she's at her wit's end, and so she drops the truth on Warren's wife, who already knew that they had this affair.
Yeah, it's one of those classic scenes where she's like saying, and she's like, I just told you that I'm having an affair with your husband. Didn't you hear me? Like, and then all of a sudden, yes, well, I need to pick out this. Of course I knew the whole time. Yeah. Like she's like attempting to plow on and not address it. And then finally she has to say, yeah, I knew about it.
Right. But she's like, I think I know him better than you do. He would never do anything like that.
Yeah.
I think she's wrong. But...
Yeah, good thing they didn't go on the Newlywed Game. Yeah. Can you imagine like these three couples going on the Newlywed Game? I just realized this. You could have Marjoe and his girlfriend, Shatner, Robert Reed. I think all three of these couples would do terribly.
Yeah.
It'd be a great episode, though.
When your husband goes on a trip to Mexico, he plans to have a good time.
No, I'm afraid not.
Kill himself and make it look like an accident.
What? Warren? Well, you should have been paying attention. It's not like I didn't leave clues. Oh, Warren.
Remember when I read you the will?
Oh, I thought you were just being pedantic.
Well, of course.
And Marjoe, like every answer, he would have like drawn little like flowery pictures and done like block letters. He would have written everything.
Right. So the next day, I guess, we find out that the girl died. Sam and Marjoe just hop on their bikes and leave.
Right, like Shatner wakes up like from a hungover and
right.
Apparently drunk himself to sleep or whatever.
Yeah.
Wakes up like maybe like 20 yards away from the bar or whatever.
Yeah.
Like on the ground.
Right.
And wakes up and sees Sam and Terry driving off, and Paul looks like he's about to drive off too.
Right. What
an odd thing to wake up to on this kind of trip.
Yeah. There's something wrong with his bike, and he's just fed up and he wants to go home. And then Paul, yes. Yeah. But he does say, the girl died, but we got our passes back, and
all's well.
That's it.
Well.
They're going to wherever to get an airplane.
Yeah.
And then Warren's looking at his bike, and he sees like it's white around the gas cap, and he realizes that he's sabotaged his own motorcycle.
Yeah, and he confronts him that, but at some point here, Robert Reed does something that I really thought, when he's trying to explain all this, he says, I made a command decision, I made an executive decision or something like that. Like, it's like, what were you going to do? I guess he wasn't going to leave Warren in the desert, but it just seemed like it could have been like the easiest thing in the world to just go wake him up and say, hey, look, this is what's going on. But maybe he thought that he wanted Terry and Sam to get away so that Warren wouldn't tell the captain about it. But But it just seems weird. But it seems like maybe a little bit of foreshadowing right there, because he's taken authority and he's like, well, I'm in charge now.
Yeah, maybe he's seen Warren hungover, and he knows You just let him wake up on his own.
Yeah.
It's trouble.
Yeah, he's a bear when he's been drinking, yeah.
But Warren, he finally just seems alive again. Cops on his bike and he chases them down.
Yeah.
And Andy sends Marjoe back to town.
Yeah.
And it turns out he's now hired him to be his in-house ad man.
That's right. He's not working for the agency anymore, as of now.
Silence is worth something.
Yep.
And then it's sort of, it's Shatner versus Andy Griffith.
Yeah. And a thrilling bike duel.
Yes.
Dirt bike duel. Right?
Dirt bike duel through the desert. Then they're on that coast road.
Mm-hmm.
They're right by the cliff. Andy keeps trying to push him off.
Yeah.
Now, earlier, when they were at the beach, by the way, there was they were leaving, and Warren was the last one to leave, and he was kind of standing on the cliff and looking down.
Oh, yeah, good call.
Thinking about maybe he'd ride off the cliff. So they had this chase, and he kind of has that almost same thing, and he turns away, and best shot in the movie.
Yeah.
Andy Griffith just right off the cliff.
The only thing is he doesn't do a Yahoo when he goes over it. Because part of him probably thought it was pretty thrilling.
I bet, yeah. Until he hit the beach and blew up.
Yeah, you get just enough time to anticipate the explosion, too.
Yeah.
and Shatner's got a great face, like expression when he's looking down and sees what happened.
Like satisfaction.
Yeah. Oh, and another moment I want to point out is when they kind of spin out, when they kind of crash into like because of like the maneuvering. There's a point where like Shatner gasps, like audibly, like right before he goes spinning into the cactus. That's a highlight too. So. And
then he drives down to the beach.
Yeah. And
just drives his bike right into the ocean.
Yeah.
And then gets out and just like is gleefully laughing. And
yeah.
Very dramatic Shatner doing it there.
Yeah, some odd laughter. This is one of the, if you're looking for like over the top Shatner, this is probably it. I mean, it picks up in this segment, but the scene of him laughing is probably the best. And unfortunately, you don't really get any good close-ups of it, but it's an amusing scene nevertheless.
Yeah. But it is, I mean, even before this trip and everything, it seems like he was feeling empty. He says that. He's just like nothing. And so he's come alive again.
Yes.
In finally doing the right thing once and stopping this whole coup.
He's come out of his ennui, and he's definitely more vibrant. You can tell.
Yeah, and then the last scene, they're back at the border. I mean, the ladies,
this scene was really weird.
So he goes off with his wife. Like Paul's like, well, now that account doesn't matter.
Yeah, but if I may, even before we get to that though, they show like, For one thing, I didn't understand why they were standing at the border. Again, the issues with time and everything, but it's the way they present it. It looks like they're putting you in suspense. I jokingly suggested that. Do you think Sam survived that explosion? There was a pretty big explosion, but there's a big coffin bringing back, and they showed, and it, like the women are kind of looking there, like all pensive, like maybe it was one of them in there.
Right.
And then the other guys show up, but for one reason, what were the women? How did they know? It's clear that there's no communication because they don't know who survived. Is what they're making it look. So it's like, is there one time of day that everybody can go cross the border, like one day of the week and one time that they all knew they'd have to be there?
Right. Yeah.
Because obviously the plans have been altered at this point. So that, of course, made no sense. But they did it so that they could have this dramatic, like, almost a swerve because you still don't know what the fate of Shatner's character is. And Angie Dickinson doesn't know, and the other women don't know. I just kind of wanted to point out how absurd that was because, and then, the guys, kind of show up again. And but at the end, yes, everybody's reunited with their respective mates.
Yes. Paul says Shatner can still have his job if he wants. Yeah. And he's like, no, you can have all that misery. Yeah. Essentially.
And may God help you or something.
Yeah. And then he and his wife walk off and they seem happy-ish.
Yeah.
Angie Dickinson's like, I want a divorce.
Yeah, they talked about like having a separate vacation or something like that. Or there was a line about, he's like, do you still want that?
She was being snotty and saying, like, well, if you take a vacation, then I'm going to take one of my own.
Yeah, and he asked her if she still wants that, and he's like, no, I want a divorce.
Right.
And he's like, ugh.
Oh. Now I have a terrible job and no wife.
It seemed like he was kind of making a half-hearted attempt. It was kind of funny, actually, because it was kind of it was that moment where you think, like, well, they've been so much that she'll be like, oh, it's almost like he expects her to say, like, oh, I'm so glad you're back. Let's make this work.
Right.
Not the case. And actually, it was established that he knew that Shatner was fired, but was it established that he didn't know that they were having an affair, or what do you think about that? He probably doesn't know.
I don't think so.
You would think he's so oblivious that he wouldn't even recognize that.
Yeah.
So he really looks like a schmuck there at the end.
And then Marjoe's girlfriend. He's like, oh, you know what? We should have that baby and get married.
Yeah.
She's like, she already took care of it.
Right, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, was it in the cantina where or
yeah,
at some point he was like, we're going to get married, and he's like living it up. And
this is when, it was in the second cantina when Sam was showing the locals how to do Boilermakers.
Yeah, and actually being like real charming, and even like the Capitan, it seems to be.
Yeah.
You could conclude that Andy Griffith had won him over, and the Capitan was like, oh, this guy's no trouble, or for whatever purpose is going to leave them alone. And Marjoe's kind of a little bit in the other end of the bar, and Andy Griffith kind of keeps making looks to him or making snide, kind of condescending comments, but Marjoe's trying to like start his own little party and nobody really cares.
Right.
I'm going to get married. Yeah.
He really is a pitiful kind of character.
He really is. Yeah. Yeah. But so Marjoe comes back all anxious, like, hey, all it took was a traumatic excursion to Baja, and it's also kind of an odd thing to do after clearly like somebody's been killed.
Right.
And I'm not sure what they said about what the circumstances were, and if they, how much they said about what happened, but he's trying to make lemonade out of lemons, I guess. I'm like, hey, let's get married, yeah. And it's just a really weird thing for him to do. And
they all came to the border there, and there's going to be 2 really awkward rides home.
Yeah, that's right.
Unless, like, maybe like Marjoe and Paul will take one of the cars.
Yeah, and then
women will take the other.
Right, yeah. That's actually a good suggestion, but not at all what the implication is.
No.
And it's a very...
we don't know how far away they are, but...
Yeah.
Still...
Pretty downbeat ending.
It is. Thank God then we get those end credits.
Yes. Shots from the
movie that go to freeze frame.
A good cast is worth repeating. Yes.
Yes, and the best is the first Andy Griffith, because it's when he's dancing in his menacing way.
Yeah, all sweaty and animated and leering.
Yeah.
Randy Andy, as you said, yes.
Yeah.
Definitely a tour de force for Andy in this.
I think so, yeah.
And we get to see everybody, and it's kind of an interesting ending. I mean, I guess you have some kind of degree. It seems like Shatner has found some kind of peace.
Yeah.
But everybody else, so you could definitely read this as a commentary on the death of the American dream. Am I crazy for saying that, that they seem to be saying that, that it's making a statement about ambition and, crass ambition and all this kind of thing and keeping up with a certain lifestyle. And Shatner, by semi-inadvertently causing the death of a rival, finds inner peace.
Yeah. And Sam is kind of like a representation of that, like a self-made pioneer American spirit.
Right.
Doesn't give a hoot about anybody.
Yeah, he's very self-centered and definitely a selfish individual. And it's weird because even though he's representing that sort of business side, he apparently doesn't actually do anything day to day with his business. Because he's like spends all his time on dirt bikes and being wooed by advertising agencies,
But as he says, he's the client.
That's right.
Not anybody else.
That's true, yeah. If I may, there's a quote I've got to read. I don't know if you came across this in your research for Pray for the Wildcats, but this is amazing. And I want to give full credit to Film Threat, which was a magazine that had an online presence. After the movie, I was doing a little bit trying to find some information. I came across this kind of focusing on Andy Griffith and how this is a departure for him. And let me just read this because I think you'll find this worth it. Griffith's ability to portray the vile and violent Farragut caught many people by surprise, including the actor himself. In an interview with journalist Noel Holston, Griffith recalled that after shooting a particularly harsh scene, the actor retired for the night but did not divorce himself from the Farragut character. That night, he dreamed that he was beating his former sitcom co-star Don Knotts to a bloody pulp. Griffith awoke in horror and frantically phoned Knotts to confirm the man was still alive and in good health. We'll definitely link to this article in the show notes, which also says that, the movie didn't go over well. It says it was dismissed as a disposable made-for-television offering. No one thought twice about it, but it got a cult following over the year. And it talks about some of the positive reactions in modern times, but also says, but not everyone was enthused. American Motorcyclist magazine dismissed it as the worst motorcycle-related film of all time.
Wow.
Yeah, apparently this character really, characterization lingered with poor Andy Griffith.
Yeah. What an image.
So your comparison of Marjoe to Don Knotts may not have been that far off the mark, Mike.
Oh. Man, I need to let that settle.
Yeah.
Worried about the nightmares I'm going to have tonight.
Yeah, you're going to have a dream
that Andy Griffith is beating up Norman Felton. No.
Yeah, as long as you don't have a dream that you're beating me to a bloody pulp.
No, I don't. I think think so. Hope not.
I think it would be bad enough dreaming that you're watching Andy Griffith beat Don Knotts to a bloody pulp.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
Yeah.
That's what I'm afraid of. So now we did point out a number of unfavorable elements of this. The excessive dirt biking.
Yeah.
Some of the logic, or whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
I do think it's an okay crime film, though.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it has the things you would expect from that.
Yes.
And I guess it's not a noir because none of it takes place at night, but in the noir tradition of average people getting caught up in something.
Yeah.
And doing a good job of putting the pressure points on all these guys again. So, why are they doing this and what's driving them? And having a really good villain.
Yeah. There's definitely elements of that. I think what hurt, I loved watching this, so I should say this.
Yeah.
I think what hurt my evaluation of the film was that after seeing the cast, and maybe like the tagline, which there's a line on Wikipedia that totally mischaracterizes the plot, by the way, I would say. But so after reading some of that, I expected kind of more of a Deliverance kind of thing, especially like the time period it came out. I thought it was like a Deliverance knockoff where they'd go off and find, if not maybe one thing, I expected like a lot of like it would increasingly get worse as they go on. There'd be these warning signs like this descent or maybe a Heart of Darkness kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So my big problem with the movie is there should have been like 15 more minutes of maybe one or two more scenes of things happening along the way and maybe cut down on the dirt biking a little bit.
Yeah.
So to me, that's the biggest flaw of the movie, that it was padded with the dirt biking when they could have used one or two more scenes of showing like things, even if it's just focused on the Andy Griffith character, have him do something a little bit more morally questionable or something like that. And I would have been happier with the movie quality.
No, that makes sense.
But part of it was my expectations, because as soon as I saw that cast, I'm like, okay, I don't need to know anything more about this. Mm-hmm. I want to see this.
Yeah, and they're all good, I think.
Yeah, they are. Marjoe to me was a little bizarre in this.
Yeah.
He was a little.
I think his relative newness to acting. Maybe.
Yeah, he's green. He's a little green. Shatner is very entertaining, and yeah, he's definitely not what you would expect. He's cast against type too. Definitely not an alpha male, somebody that's kind of beaten down by life and kind of being in the shadows and a little timid. Like the glasses and some of the ways he like fingers the glasses and stuff. It's almost like Robin Williams or something, like kind of playing down or something like that, or making himself small. It kind of reminded me of. Yeah. But I enjoyed his performance quite a bit.
Yeah. I looked up the credits for the director and the writer.
Yeah.
Nothing jumped out with the director, although it looked like he had directed a whole lot of this kind of movie.
Oh, really?
Like crime TV movies.
Okay.
The writer, in later life, wrote for a couple soap operas, but around this time, he wrote a couple episodes of Search.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, good find. Yes.
I mean, I read the titles and they didn't. It's been a while since I've watched that now, so I'm not 100% sure what episode. The
Search,
Adonis something.
Yes, folks, please go back in the archives.
Yes.
We're big fans of Search. If you haven't heard it before, check out. That's one of our favorite episodes.
Yeah, and so that was good to see.
Yeah, that's cool.
Anyway, it was fun. It's a fun movie, I think. And when the dirt biking happens, you can kind of just do something else for a little while.
It's not a excessively long movie. It might feel that way with some of the dirt biking, but there's enough in between the dirt biking scenes to make it worth your while. I think I would sum it up as this: if you're excited by the cast, if you're as interested in it as we are, you won't be disappointed by what you get.
Yeah, I do want to go back to the hair for a moment.
Okay, yes.
I forgot to say this. Do you think it's possible doing this movie inspired Shatner's look in the late 70s and 80s? The curly-haired look.
You think some of the other
looking around at some of his
rubbed off on him?
Yeah,
that's quite possible. I hadn't considered that.
I mean, because Bert sort of went that way too.
Yeah.
So that might have just been the style.
Right. I wonder too if do you think it's possible that Shatner thought that he would stand out more, like it was an ego thing, like by not going that direction? That he thought, well, Andy's got his own thing going on.
Yeah.
But I'm going to craft my own look that's distinct from them, and therefore steal the movie from them by playing down the hair.
I wouldn't put it past him.
Now, I should mention, too, that we think of Shatner as kind of like we've talked about him as a legend in this episode, but he was on some hard times in there. Like in the 70s. This was before T.J. Hooker Rescue 911. This was after Star Trek, and he was not getting a lot of acting gigs for a while, or he was having to take whatever he could.
Typecasting.
Yeah, and I mean, he had like a Western show, like I think after this, but he was in kind of what would be considered like B movies and things like that, and it wasn't top of the world. So if he had the famous Shatner ego at this time, his career certainly didn't back up that he could be pushing people around, but it still wouldn't surprise either of us if he tried to do that. But he didn't have as much leverage as he did before and after, I would say, that at this point in his
Right.
career. So maybe he was, who knows? I'd like to know more. Hasn't he written about 6 or 7 biographies? I got to go through and see if he wrote about Pray for the Wildcats.
Oh, good point. I wonder, he needs to just do a book about his hair.
Yeah.
The definitive. I mean, he's got such a good sense of humor about himself at this point.
Yeah,
I think he could probably do something.
I think probably like even 10, 15 years ago he wouldn't have been ready, but you'd think now he'd be ready to write a book about his hair.
Like a coffee table book. Yeah. Museum quality photos
Yep.
of his different hair pieces on mannequin heads.
And he could explain like the choices and how they contribute to the role that it was used for. Yeah, that'd be a great idea.
If you're listening, Bill.
Yeah, please.
As we know you are.
Yeah. Yeah, welcome to Battle of the Network shows, and hopefully we made it worth your while by giving you another great idea.
Right.
Another business opportunity.
You could maybe even spin it off into like a new version of Tech Wars.
Yeah.
In the future, everyone has synthetic hair.
Yeah. Yes, and Pray for the Wildcats, I want to mention it's available on like a legitimate commercial DVD, believe it or not. But 7 other movies. Yes, if you're too cheap to buy the DVD, you can also find it online pretty easily. It was made, I think, by ABC Circle Films or something like that, which was kind of like their in-house production studio that made a lot of these movies. And I think it had something to do with like moonlighting we talked about in a previous episode. They were involved there. So it might be one of those deals where actual ownership of the movie is sketchy, or at least people aren't worked up about it enough to take it down from online. So it's easy to find is what I'm saying. And I would recommend that you do find it and watch it because it's good. And I think it was a worthy entry to kick off our occasional exploration of television movies.
And now we're off to Baja for a 600-mile trek.
Sounds good, with just maybe the sleeping bag on the back of our bikes. We can travel light and see where the coastline takes us.
Maybe a hatchet.
Yeah, that would come in handy.
Yeah.
This episode brought to you by the Norland Ad Agency. We go the extra 600 unpaved miles. This episode also brought to you by Wide Lapels. Get with the program and go wide. This episode also brought to you by Farragut Industries. Sure, our CEO might have died after mysteriously driving his motorcycle off a cliff, but one day we'll have the technology to reanimate his remains, and when we do, you'll all be sorry. Farragut Industries, final challenge. Join us next time for another exciting episode of Battle of the Network shows. Learn more, leave feedback, and suggest future episodes at battleofthenetworkshows.com. Follow us on Twitter at BatNetShows and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Battle of the Network shows.